This episode is brought to you by Verizon Wireless.
Hello, YouTube and Twitch. Welcome to Watching Thrones. We are live right after the Game of Thrones series finale, The Iron Throne. This episode is brought to you by Verizon. Be the first to real-time with Verizon 5G Ultra Wideband. Get the new Samsung Galaxy S10 5G. Thank you to Verizon, and thank you to my honored guest. I'm Roth, Cornet, and I'm here with my small council tonight, Spencer Gilbert, as always.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Hey now. Danielle Radford, Eric Goldman.
Hi, I'm
welcome.
multitasking.
Stop posting her.
Michelle, unfortunately, was not able to join us tonight, but she will be here.
She's with her real friends.
She's with her real friends.
Congrats.
Congratulations for having real friends.
We have work friends.
And vodka. We are here tonight to represent Michelle and the Thronesers out there, and we will be back to do a series wrap-up next week, so look forward to that with Michelle. First, let's just get the raw, straight feelings in your gut. Danielle, in a sentence, what happened?
My straight raw feeling is, you know what? That chair looked uncomfortable anyway.
Okay.
It looked like a very uncomfortable chair, and maybe it was good that it can be melted. We could repurpose it for, you can put it online and say,
Did you like it or not?
Remake the show?
So, Eric.
I was trying to find something funny because I can't.
It wasn't awful. It's just the problem is so much of how we got there. There's like things, if I were to explain it, I actually don't hate some of the things that happen. It's the problem the season's had the whole time, which is how we got there, things feeling rushed, things not feeling earned. So it was sad because it took a lot of emotion away from moments that I thought should have been huge, but they just kind of happened.
Our friend Brett over this weekend, basically, he said that how he felt about the show to date was that if you had told him sort of the synopses of how the series was going to end, he would have thought it was great. And then getting into it and how we arrived there has largely been his issue. And I think some fans are feeling that way. Spencer Gilbert.
Yeah, if it was... Look, this is one of the greatest television shows of all time.
Yes.
Top 5 at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're crazy if you don't have it up there. My chair's going to be sinking all show. But that's fine. That's fine.
We promised you raw.
Today, we're just talking about the finale.
Yes.
And this finale, I was hoping to the very end that they would pull out and it would all be in a snow globe. And then, it'd be Ned Stark holding it. And he'd say,
And it was Krampus.
And it was Krampus.
Wow.
Ron Harris is there representing the chat, and he's representing what the internet is saying for us, and representing himself. Lon, what is your quick feeling, and then what are you seeing in the chat?
My quick feeling is, like everything else this season, I think it felt rushed. I would have loved to see where we would have gotten if we had 10 episodes leading into this, but I have to say I really enjoyed the episode. I didn't have the kind of major problems I think a lot of other people are having, and I really like the montage where you see where sort of all the Starks have ended up. I thought it ended it on kind of a nice button.
And what are you seeing largely in the chat?
Lots of questions in the chat. People are excited about Ghost. He finally got his snoot booped.
Yes.
A lot of questions about why things happened. Like, why do we think Drogon melted that Iron Throne? Why do we think the Unsullied went for this deal? And what is Sweet Robin Aaron subsisting on now that he can't rely on his mother's breast milk?
These are all very, very, very important questions. Let's break them down. We definitely want to get...
Dragon's breast.
There you go.
I will say that I was pretty delighted to see Ghost Snout get booped as well. He has long earned that boop.
That was a courtesy boop after he disappeared 2 weeks ago.
Because you didn't know you're ever going to see Ghost again, so
Yeah.
that
was a planned
I still got
boop.
issues with John, though.
I think that they knew, I think the showrunners knew that they were not going to allow us to have that boop, and they saved the boop for the last episode.
There's like a server farm in Korea where they had to like quick render that boop. Like as soon as the internet reacted, they're like, oh shit, we need to give them another boop.
He deserved that boop, but
that boop.
nobody deserved Ghost. Let's talk about, I'm going to go in order of events. Actually, this is a little out of order, but in order of what I believe is the most important things. And those are parallel. That's King Bran and Dany dies. So let's start with King Bran and what we make of that. Can I just present something to the jury really quick, and then the jury can respond? I understand the idea that we are human, we are flawed. Bran is no longer human. He's no longer one of us. Therefore, he doesn't have like the avarice that the rest of us suffer from, and all of this ambition to get to the throne. However, we're mad at Daenerys because she burned a city in order to be queen because her ambition overtook her that much, right? We're mad at all of these other people that will kill and maim in order to see their ambitions fulfilled, right? Bran knew that Daenerys was going to do that, and at any given moment could have worked into almost anything or anyone if he so saw fit to enter before Jon had to do it. But he didn't, and at the end when they asked, "Oh, Bran, will you be king?" He said, "Well, why do you think I came all this way?"
Because it was all according to Bran.
Because it was all according to his plan, which to me means he allowed his ambitions to let all of these people die.
I completely agree.
Yes.
The entire time while he's staring at people and staring at things, he knows that eventually all of these deaths are going to lead to him being on the Iron Throne. He does
Which means
nothing.
that he determined that he was the best person to be there, which is
I
the
like it.
same failing that we're condemning all of these other characters
He should have had an
for.
evil laugh at the end. They should have shown him one more time.
Wait.
Am I
Evil
I
just
get
like,
it thematically. I do.
I don't.
Okay.
I'm just in shock because like they literally shut the door on him last episode. I'm on the record Bran hater. I'm not happy. I can't believe he's our king. He was like literally like, my job on this show is done. I'm going to stare at the ground now. And they shut the door, the barn door on Bran. And for him to roll back in and just be nominated king. First of all, nominated king. Who would vote for Bran for king?
None of them know him. Who knows him?
Bran?
He's
And if
just
they know him, he's like, I'm not Bran.
Well, they
He's
were
the
all
weird-
listening to Prisoner Tyrion. They all took advice from him.
Look, he's the weird tree starer. He just hangs out underneath a tree and stares at people. I've met dudes like that. They're not my king.
So, Eric, you
Yeah.
just raised a really good point, which was that not only did they, to some degree, when they were, I thought that we were going to a place in this series where it would be some sort of democracy.
Oh,
I
you
mean,
had your moment in
I
the
had my
sun when
moment.
Sam is
Yeah.
like, everyone should vote. Roth was like, called it. Everyone.
Shut it down.
Hashtag democracy now.
And then,
Just kidding.
and then it did not go that way. However, it was some version of it for this world. And you raised a really good point, which was that the Unsullied, who were clearly in power in this moment, were letting their prisoner talk.
It was all very, I say tenuous. It was extremely tenuous. It just, things had to happen, so they happened. But, the thing with Bran, and I think this comes up a lot with the final season in general, but this finale is like, the whole thing with George R.R. Martin told them, here's how it ends. I can see, where the books are. If you said it's going to end with Bran on the throne, I'm like, I can see how they can get there because Bran is so important in the books. Like, it's clearly like they're aiming towards it. But on the
He's
show,
currently eating Jojen Reed's eyes as a paste, if you believe the theory.
But it's like on the show, he's not going to be exciting to follow, so they push him to the side. And so it's like, it's one of those things they didn't earn. Like, there's a way to earn it being like, yes, Bran on the throne, that makes sense. But as a TV viewer, the way the show worked, it just kind of feels random.
And I will
It's
say,
him. Yeah.
everything that I say after this, because I do completely agree with you, where it's like, yes, none of these things feel super surprising. Dany's turn doesn't feel surprising. Even Bran, none of this feels surprising. It's the execution. It's not where we ended up.
Well, I was
And
surprised
so I
by
will
this.
say, by
This
Bran?
was surprising. I think there was a what moment, and it was like surprise for the sake of surprise. Like, you didn't see this coming. Like, who's the last person you would have picked? Bran. It just, and I don't like to nitpick and like the reality of the world and stuff like that, but I just don't see how all these lords of of Westeros would be okay with this complete stranger who belongs to now a separatist state, Winterfell. His first act is to be like, fine, take Winterfell. You don't think everyone would rescind their vote and be like, can I have my eye back? Because he just gave away one of the 7 kingdoms on day 1. And Dorne's like, hey, how about me? Iron Islands, hey, how about me? Like, what?
No,
What
just
kind of
the one
unity
my
is-
sister runs.
Yeah, just
My
the one
sister
my
gets
sister.
special sister privilege, okay?
But I think
And
that's
frolic you.
Yeah, and I don't want this to turn into a negative like pile-on of the show, but I think to your point that this was set up initially, the series, as a very, very, very realistic feeling medieval political drama, right? And people, yeah, here comes this guy who has been missing all of this time, doesn't communicate terribly well, says he's no longer human, and then he frees his sisters to be queen of her own realm, and they're still going to follow him perfectly peacefully. And his small council is made up of this sellsword. Let's talk about,
Well, yeah, just a broader point. It's like things on the show that are great, and we all remember like the red wedding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like everyone had a motivation, and a very clear-cut motivation. Like the Boltons had their own angle, the Lannisters had their own angle, the Starks had their own angle, Robb Stark, everyone involved in that, you knew where they were coming from, and it wasn't all coming from the same place. With this Bran thing, it's just like, well, here's just this row of kind of now faceless yes men being like, all right, sure. I don't know why each of them said yes to that.
Well, and I think the other thing is too, to your point, is that the events like that were earned because they actually were foreshadowed. And I think this is something we talked about last week. All of that, the groundwork was laid, but it wasn't oversold and telegraphed so that by the time the Red Wedding came, it was not a shock. It was a shock.
Yeah.
But you could understand how they got there.
Yeah. The other thing with Bran, though, is that, we've talked
Well, it was
about...
a shock if you didn't know it was coming.
Right. But the thing with Bran is we've talked about how it seems like Benioff and Weiss were never that enamored with the sort of mystical supernatural side of this story, and we're trying to kind of get rid of it as quickly as they could. Bran is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And that's another reason I feel like he probably was not serviced well by the TV show version. If we assume the books are going to end the same way, we don't know for sure. But if the books end with Bran on the throne, it's like, again, he's going to probably be so much more important in the story because they're going to focus a lot more on what the hell he can do and, his abilities. And during the Battle of Winterfell, when he's like, I'm going to go in, some birds and fly around instead of actually doing something. It just feels like because they held back on showing Bran's full abilities, it wasn't what interested them. Then at the end, it's just, again, another reason that Bran just feels like this. He's not a minor character, but we're just not as invested in him as everyone else.
Well, but
the
also
other
there's
major
this whole
characters.
premise that he's going to be this great leader because he's got the memory of the
Yeah.
world and he's got all. Wait, hang on. He's got all this information to not make these mistakes. And his first act in the small council is to be like, well, I'll go find Drogon.
Yeah.
And wheel off and work and let you guys run the government, right?
I'm gonna go and I'm going to take one of my nights, one of my best nights. They're gonna wheel me away and they're gonna watch me while I go sleep, night, find this dragon, and I will be back.
And it
Or
goes
however
to
long I'm gone.
Yeah, sorry. Go. I mean, talk about that.
Go off, Danielle.
I'm not telling you to go off, but I'm just like, how is that unlike any other absentee ruler that we've seen?
Oh
Because he's got the best story.
no, and I don't.
That was a dangerous monologue on this finale to say about the power of stories.
I assume that it's part of your thing. I am gonna say that book thing is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, it's not, and
the meta.
The Song of Ice and
it's
Fire.
Yeah.
so meta and it's so hastily done, and that's why it hurts.
Yeah.
It's not that, like, I guess it hurts is hyperbole. It's a TV show. I'm fine. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna sleep very well. No one gave me an arrow to the chest, but it was something that I felt really out of what we know of the show. And yeah, the idea that Bran he has been mostly absent, and all he does is stare into space. And it's not all he does, he's figuring out things. And yes, we have to know history to be able to not repeat it, but Sam also knows history.
And Sansa knows how to rule a kingdom,
Yeah.
and is thinking 17 steps ahead. And she's like, all right.
Advisors are why you rule something, right? Like, you have the people around you who are very good and know how to rule and know, your history, know how to run battles, know how to run all of these things. He kind of knows it because he has a Hulu account? I'm not sure.
Well, when Tyrion said, I'm still thinking, like, who has the best story among us? Like, I really thought that they were going Jon Snow, because, like, he's got the story, he's got the pedigree, he's got whatever, and that's fine. That would have been, like, a safe ending. But Bran's story, I'm just trying to imagine them, like, relaying Bran's story to, like, the small folk, to, like, the people he'll be ruling. Like, okay, get this. So, first, the Stark kid that's living, he went into a magic tree.
Yeah.
He has now become part of that. He's no longer Bran Stark. He thinks he's the three-eyed raven. He can control animals. You serve him now.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best story?
But why do people, and the interesting thing too is, like, that's not why people are okay with a leader, though. They're okay with a leader because their fields are full of wheat and they have,
And things of that nature. Yeah.
Like,
Oats going well.
Oats,
Oats going great.
It's because your life and your family are doing okay.
Well, yeah.
That's why.
And that's
you know?
something. And this is not a spoiler for Chernobyl. Chernobyl is
We know
amazing.
how it's
We
a real
know
fact.
how
Yeah.
it literally happened. But a lot of this episode reminded me of Chernobyl, and I think I'll keep coming back to it. But one of the things about it was, if you listen to the podcast, they talk about how the towns around that were very well taken care of. The reason why you lived there, you were allowed to live there and you were privileged to live there because, unlike other places, you know, you never had to wait in line. You always had supplies, none of these other things. And so those are the things, I guess now, having watched a couple of episodes of that I think of, because I agree, when you talk about leaders, it's not just about whose dragons Burnsy the hottest. It's also about, where do I get the bread? Who gives me bread?
Yeah.
Who gives me bread? Who is giving me, you know, how do I get more cows? Do I actually get to eat meat?
Yeah, Bran. Now it's Bran.
Now it's Bran.
Which is fine. Like, I get that that's like not a terrible ending to me, but that is the exact same situation that the whole kingdom was left in before all this happened. You
Yeah.
had someone like
Nothing has
Littlefinger.
changed.
Like, nothing has changed.
No, yeah, and I mean, I think that's
Except like super death.
Which is fine, because that's a cool choice, and like but I just don't think that's what the show wanted us to take away. We wanted it to be the happy ending, but it does seem like nothing changed.
Well, it's interesting because I think you're right. Where I think the point that they're trying to make, and the thematic point or the poetry or the beauty of Bran being there as a leader would be that he is divorced of all of the human traits that that made people ill-equipped to lead. That we have decided have made people ill-equipped to lead. Right? Whether
They could
it's-
also lean into the tragic side of, you know, he's with them but not with them if they wanted to, but they didn't
Right.
spend enough time to.
Right, exactly. But then, so he's going to eventually die, and we're saying, okay, they've made a point too that we agree with, that sort of like the line of secession doesn't make a ton
Right.
of sense. So now they're going to get a new leader every time. However, that person isn't going to be a tree man, as far as I know. And so well, no, I mean, like eventually a human being will have to be in that position.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of human beings that were pretty okay at it.
Yeah.
You know, so like I don't know if there was a poetry in the storytelling in this end, if we finally felt it, because the opening of this episode did feel like an episode of Chernobyl, like very dark, very
A lot of
grim,
ashes, a lot of walking.
and then it was like the Game of Thrones, and then it was like the Game of Thrones sitcom that we've all pitched in our minds before
Yeah.
in that small council. Like they were just chucking it up. Here's the book.
It was very strangely structured because it basically was the first third is, well, we got to deal with Dany. You know, it's like, okay, we have to deal with what happened last episode.
What do you do with a problem like
Dany.
Daenerys?
Which was basically all Jon being like, no, we don't have to do anything, and then being like, okay, yeah, we have to kill her, and then killing her. So, and then there's this shift, like you're saying, that it's now we're just going to deal with other stuff and have some light comedy and little moments, and it was strange. It was strange how they structured it. And the other thing about, you mentioned Jon as a possibility, which again, boring if it had happened, but I just wanted them to, there were things people weren't saying that should have been said. They should have brought up, if there was a time to finally reveal to everyone who Jon was, it was right then. And maybe that gets shot down because it's all unclear with the Unsullied, what they would allow and not allow. But it was just strange it wasn't even brought up as a possibility. Is that, well, the guy who actually has the best claim to the throne is the one
right in there.
Yeah, is in the
Yeah.
cell. Yes, there's a way you get out of that. I just thought it was bizarre to not talk about it. Not to have maybe Tyrion talk to like Arya and Sansa privately about it. It just doesn't come up.
And the
matter.
other odd thing to me too with Tyrion talking everybody into that, it's like we've had enough of your words. You're right, and no one's the better for him. However, I do
I have
have
a long
the answer.
monologue now.
How many times has he given a imprisoned speech?
Yeah.
Like in a cell or in cuffs?
Can
I
we
feel
just-
like we've seen this before.
More Emmys. He needs
more
all
Emmys.
of the
He
Emmys,
does.
and they keep being like, how do we get him Emmys?
Yeah, I mean,
Just all of the Emmys.
Well, the acting is great. The acting has always been
Yeah.
tremendous. The filmmaking on the show is tremendous. I think that what we're getting to, and since we're on Daenerys, how Bran got to be king, which was that Daenerys had to die in order for that to happen. Let's talk about that. I mean, I think that first 15, 20 minutes was really working for me. The tone I thought was right on. It was a little convenient that he was able to find his siblings. However, that was a beautifully played scene.
In the end, it was bricks that killed Jaime Lannister.
Yes, it was.
It was bricks that killed the Kingslayer.
Which goes into the book. And I thought it was like the moment between Jon and Daenerys did work. We talked about this. Like
I liked her like super fascist speech to everyone in the different
That was
language.
great.
That was great.
And the fact that he stabbed her in the place that the Night King was stabbed to be made, like there was some poetry in that. There was, we've talked about before the idea that we talked about last week, the idea of twisting the idea of the hero in fantasy. He had to slay the dragon, but there's a tragedy to it.
And I genuinely believe that Dany had talked him out of it with her like Springsteen, like, look at us, we're just two kids on the wrong side of the tracks. Look where we come.
No, I knew she was dying the minute she said they don't get a choice.
That was it. Yep.
I knew she was dying the minute she said that.
It's tough for me because that whole it was very well done, and in and of itself there's just an asterisk next to it because I wasn't on the last week's episode, but I had so many problems like a lot of people did with not that we would get to her wiping out people left and right, but that I didn't think they earned it on the show. And they also did the thing of kind of not getting inside, like keeping her at arm's length, so we didn't really get to know her this season like we usually do. So that just kept bugging me. It's like, this is really good right now. It's a well done sequence. I just wish I was invested like I should be, as I had been for the first 7 years of the show. They just kind of had lost me because of the storytelling choices. But yeah, it was good stuff. There was little things that made me quibble that just made me laugh. Like what happened when Jon said, I want to go see Dany. Grey Worm's behind him killing prisoners, but then Grey Worm beats him there. He gets up to walk up, and Grey Worm's standing there.
You saw how slow Jon was walking.
Yeah,
It was some
Grey Worm
thoughtful paces.
He booked it around.
He kind of he lumbers along.
That's true. He's a lumber.
Yeah, those are the ones where those are the ones that don't bug me as much.
Yeah.
I thought that was very well played. I thought there was a subversion of the tropes of, he's slaying the woman he loves, he's slaying the dragon at the same time, he's paying the price. He's still unsure whether he did the right thing. And I think that we've talked about that before too, that this show is ultimately the story of everyone getting what they want, and there being like a tragic poetry to that. Like she did get the wheel broken. The throne is gone by her. Oh my God, broke my heart when he was nudging her. Drogon was nudging her and then flew away with her. Broke my heart.
That's like the series.
Beautiful.
There's nothing like that on TV.
did.
I have some questions. How smart are dragons? Are
Very
they like
smart.
dog, dolphin,
Puppies, right?
chimpanzee? How smart are dragons? Because this one was like, okay, I'm gonna nudge Jon. I'm gonna burn the throne because like that is what she always wanted, and that's what killed her in the end. Like,
I want him to deliver
did the dragon
a
have a
monologue.
sense of like poetic?
Yeah, I wanted Drogon to start talking and say, "So much life has been lost for this throne."
Yeah, and then I also thought that he was gonna help Jon cover up the murder.
I didn't take it that way. I took it as yes, okay, fine. Was it convenient that it was the Iron Throne that melted, and that's the thing that she's always wanted, and she broke
He
the
was
wheel?
just pissed.
Yeah, but
It
I
was in
mean,
his way.
but I don't think it was that. I think it was that he was gearing up to slay Jon, which would be his natural instinct. But that Jon's a Targaryen, and he like he can't.
He sniffed it.
He like for
sniffed
whatever
it.
reason he can't kill the Targaryens. So he just at the last minute, it's like if I was gonna shoot someone and then at the last minute I moved because I didn't want to kill that person, he just moved the flame and then he took out the chair, which I guess that's a little convenient, but to me that does work. The metaphor works. She wanted the wheel broken.
Yeah.
It wasn't the way that she wanted. Everyone's getting what they want. Sansa's queen, but look what it took her. Look what it cost her.
Yeah.
Arya's free. Look what it cost her. All of this is them. Jon's legitimate. Look what it cost him.
Well, and it's not like dragons aren't cats. Who I love cats. I'm sorry, Roth. I love cats.
Are you? Yeah.
Here comes a butt.
Okay.
But if you die, a cat will eat you. I love you. I'm so sorry.
So will a dog eventually,
So will
right?
a
So will a
dog.
dog. Any animal. Any animal. They will eat you.
My cat will eat me right now if I don't get up in time.
I'm getting a cat soon. Like I'm speaking
They're
from
great.
I'm speaking
They're
from
amazing.
And they will consume your flesh.
Yeah, they absolutely,
They will.
absolutely will eat your eyeball, but they are delightful.
They will consume all of your flesh. But yeah, that was, I guess that was my understanding of the dragon was that it was trying to go to Jon, couldn't do it, sniffed him. You have that sniff thing.
Sure.
Where you're like, I smell my mommy all over. Oh, that's gross. But I smell my mommy on you, so I can't kill you, but I'm going to. And also, I mean, that chair sucked.
Yeah.
Well, they were describing that take
dude
the
knows
chair
that
from the
chair
books.
sucked.
That was the super high one that's like thousands of swords
Yeah.
piled high. Is
Yeah.
like, no, this ain't the books. It's a dumb plastic one.
But also, like, a cushion. They have cushions in the Red Keep.
But it's supposed to be like, oh, it like reminds you of how hard it is to be king, and it pokes
That's
you all the
dumb.
time.
I'm king. Give me a cushion.
Yeah.
I think
well-
Joffrey would have been like, put a cushion on here, mommy.
The other thing, though, with the sort of unfinished thoughts in this episode, though, there were times like when he was talking about, she had her whole speech about we brought liberty to King's Landing.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, you're like, well, okay, she is straight up psycho because she brought liberty by killing everyone. But it was just one of those things where they didn't finish these thoughts, because when Jon and Tyrion are talking about, when Jon's like, oh, the war's over, and he's like, you're an idiot, which he was being. But he's like, what do you think she means when she says liberty? Basically saying she's going to keep conquering, but he doesn't say, but liberty was killing everyone. And then when Jon confronts her, he does say, you killed children, but she goes, well, Cersei was using them as a shield. And I just wanted him to be like, but they've surrendered. Like, it's like he didn't finish that thought, It's
Yeah.
like, but she has surrendered, So she they didn't fully talk out the situation.
And I don't want to. I don't. But it's such a very heavy-handed political allegory. Like, obviously, you don't have to stretch for it to be so heavy-handed, for her to be like, I'm the You don't say liberator that often if you're not someone who's like, get it? Get it? Liberators? Because you come to it. And so, for me, that was also something that was... I've always felt like the political allegories in Game of Thrones have been more delicately handled, and this time they were just like hit you on the face.
Well, yeah, because it was, the Starks and the Lannisters are like the Yorks and the Lancasters. It's
Yeah.
rooted
The
in
War of the
medieval
Roses, yeah.
history.
Yeah.
And now it's rooted in, I guess,
10 years ago
Iraq?
history? I don't know.
Well, and it's a little bit tricky too, because we talked about this last week, where it's the idea of someone being, and I use Jim Jones as kind of like the analogy of
Oh, that's a
someone
good analogy.
starting out with actually
crap.
good intentions, because he actually did start out with good intentions in the community,
And then at the end, a bunch of people of color were dead.
Exactly. So it's not dissimilar, right? But like when you start to believe the idea that you are you're in trouble. When you start to really believe, I wish it just hadn't been done in exposition. That's all.
Yeah.
The idea is correct.
Show, don't tell.
You know what I mean? Like, when you start to believe that you have some grand destiny that is elevated above and beyond other human beings, you are in a lot of trouble. And you're not going anywhere good, ever. So, but they literally were having the conversation. Tyrion was explaining that to Jon.
The things that we
and
should have seen happen
Yeah.
on the show in the previous episodes.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So I love the ideas. I really love the ideas.
Absolutely.
As much as I wanted Daenerys to be a real hero, and as much as I believe and unfortunately on the show, the only Daenerys that we've seen actually did care about people. We never saw her not care about people.
Right.
That suddenly overnight this happened was what was too. That's just such a bummer, man.
Yeah.
And they did. And
That's my review.
Bummer, man.
Bummer,
Bummer,
man.
man.
Well, and they did. They foreshadowed it, but again, this isn't. We all knew that this is where it was
knew
going to
where
happen.
it was
Mad
coming.
Queen was where we were going.
Yeah.
It's just the rushed execution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's show, not tell. It's the reason why when people complain about the Matrix series and they complain about that room with the architect, what the complaint is that, well, in the first Matrix, when you're being shown what happened, you're being shown what happened. It's not someone just yakety-yakking at you.
Yeah.
Whereas...
He stops the bullets and then he goes, whoa.
Whoa!
And then the audience understands he's the one. And then the architect is going, ergo cogito, ergo sum. There have been 17 other ones before you.
And it doesn't work as well. And even when they do the explanation points, it's still them showing what happened through really clever editing. And it just... show, don't tell is always such a fundamental, filmmaking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. There's going to be, I'm not making this headline, but I think there are going to be headlines. Did Star Wars ruin Game of Thrones? And the reason I'm saying that wait,
I'm already
wait
seeing
for
it.
the murder. Wait, is because, and Spencer and I have the same sort of, I don't want to even say it's a theory, but presumption that Benioff and Weiss were rushing to get to Star Wars. And so they could have had all the time they wanted in the world to tell the story. And when they chose only 6, I respected it because I figured that's all you need. It was like with Breaking Bad. He was like, these are the seasons I need and then I'm done to tell this story.
Yeah, and Benioff's writing developed Omega, the Will Smith
Gemini.
Omega Man?
Yeah.
Gemini Man. Yeah, Gemini Man, and they're doing a new Star Wars trilogy. I'm just like an antitrust, like we got to break up the big banks. We got to break up the big nerd franchises.
Contracts are contracts, right? So when you sign on to do a big series like a Star Wars or like anything else, they say, hey, these things need to be out on this schedule. You need to be working on it by this schedule. And if what they needed was not happening in time for them to do it, you just gotta wrap it up.
Okay, except counter argument. We also live in a town where you can throw a rock and find a Brian Fuller.
I agree.
Or another showrunner.
I agree.
And it's time to make then a sacrifice.
Now, see, for what it's worth, I will say this. If you go back, again, we're being obviously very speculative here, all of us, but for my speculative, it's like, if you go back and look at interviews that was around season 5 of Game of Thrones, and of course they were being asked, like, what are you looking towards the end game? They would talk a lot about probably 7 seasons, and you got this feeling in HBO, then they'd be asking, oh, well, it could go 8, it could go this. It always felt like HBO wanted more than Benioff and Weiss wanted. Now, of course, HBO wants the cash cow to continue, but at the same time, it seemed like Benioff and Weiss, whether it was because they were burnt out, or that they were more optimistic than it turned out they should have been about how much time they needed, they felt they could wrap it up in 7. Because it felt like season 8, that was the compromise, because they did a shorter 7 and 8, right? So instead of doing 10 for 7 and being done, they did 13. So I think that was all before Star Wars. Then Star Wars made it, now they really had to finish, but it was like, I think that they wanted to be done really badly. And and then of course the thing about trying to hit Martin's pinpoints, I think, is what really did them in, because now they couldn't end it the way they might have done. Their own ending might have been much better. I'm not saying better than what the books will be. I'm just saying better than this, where they're trying to aim towards things he's just told them, but they're not going to get there the same way.
And look, they don't owe us anything. They don't have to keep making Game of Thrones until they die. It's just the fact that we're now talking about their contracts and the season is a really bad sign for how the show ended.
We want reasons. Like, why didn't it land,
Well, and
I think it's probably a combination of a lot of this.
Because with the pinpoints, I think it's very hard if you've been crafting a show to then suddenly be like, I don't have a roadmap to get to these points. And look, again, and he doesn't owe us anything either. He doesn't owe us more books. We would like them. I want them. He doesn't owe them to us. But if it was able for them to say, like, well, this is what we have shown in our series, so let's do the ending that makes sense for what we have been showing people and what we have been doing in our series, instead of saying, well, we have to end it the way that the books might end, or the way that he would end. And we don't know how that's going to happen, and we never will. And we never will. And we don't know anything, but we have to do it.
Yeah.
I do think that if they would have been given an opportunity to say, look, you got to end this, but you have to end it the way that makes sense for the story you have been crafting, and not the story someone else has been crafting that you don't have access to, I think it could have been different.
Yeah, and again, this is one of the greatest series that has ever been. And there were moments in tonight's episode, I think we're sounding a little negative on the negative tip.
There are things I loved.
There were moments in tonight's episode that I really loved. I mean, I love the resolution of Sansa. That felt earned to me.
Absolutely.
That arc, and that's very much their character. Like, she has gone in and I think that's notable, that the characters that have gone in a very different way that they have largely driven, that resolution felt completely earned. She had no give about the North in the end, in the sense that we have come to know on the show would have no give.
Yep.
Yeah.
And has earned that queendom.
Yeah, I think that, I know we live in a world of extremes where people, especially it seems online, it's like either you love it or you hate it all the way. But it's like, I'm not one of the, even though I don't think this final season delivered what I wanted to, I'm not like, and Benioff and Weiss, they couldn't deliver once they didn't have the books. Because first of all, doing a great adaptation is really hard.
Yes.
And second of all, there's so many scenes that they invented for the series that were great.
Yeah.
That were some of my favorite scenes. We were just talking in the office the other way, like Arya and Tywin, all these great things. So to be like, they couldn't do anything on their own, I mean, I think that's really foolish to say. it just, there's a lot of things that unfortunately I think led to this being an unsatisfying conclusion. But I don't want to be like, now the show's ruined, because the show's still great.
And I think especially Sansa's plotline, because I think right now in the books she's like undercover as like Jane something being smuggled around, and she's not with Ramsay Bolton, and so they've definitely given and taken away.
But I mean that was an arc that I was very, very happy with. How did we feel about Jon?
I don't get it, man.
I don't get it.
What is the Night's Watch for if they're on good terms with the wildlings? Like, I get that, like, they were ostensibly there for the Night King and the magical monsters. And then the wildlings was, like, the actual reason. But now that that's not a problem, like, he is ice. It's a literal song of ice and fire, and he is customs and border controlled now for the rest of his
they
life.
literally say it's just a place to send bastards and prisoners. I'm like, but what do they do? Like, what do they? They just send them there. They hang out,
breaking rocks.
It's
like,
just weird.
Well, it's basically. I mean, what it looked like to me is that he wasn't. He was going. He said he turned around. He said goodbye to his former life. Hello to Ghost Nose. And went, and he was going to be a wilding. Like, he wasn't.
I think that's what Jon is going to do, but I still want to know what is the night. Like, if they act like there's still a Night's Watch that has some purpose or something, and I just was like, are there still people? Like, did they abandon Castle Black, or are there still some actual Night's Watch there? And what are they doing?
What kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal did they think wouldn't happen between Jon Snow and Winterfell, which is now, I don't know, like Puerto Rico or some like half in the country, half not thing. Like, he can do whatever he wants. Like, the Night's Watch didn't seem like a real punishment because his sister rules Winterfell, which is on the other side of the gate.
Well, I mean, and how they sort of reached this compromise with the Unsullied, and what do we think about Grey? Was Grey Worm letting him walk by him and not killing him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he just gave him the sneer, right? Like, we're so not cool anymore.
Used to be cool, man.
What happened, man?
That feels a little unlike, what the fact that Tyrion and Jon were still alive felt odd to me.
Oh, I mean, look, we've talked about plot armor and other times. The plot armor was when Dany didn't just kill Tyrion on the spot.
Yeah.
When, when he took off that pin and threw it, given where Dany has gone as a character, why the hell why she go, take him away?
Yeah.
There's just no reason.
Drogon was right there.
Yeah, he keeps surviving these things. Like, he survived the other time with Cersei, right? Where she killed Missandei, but not him. So just that to me was like, why would she take him prisoner at this point? Like, this Dany, if we're going to go all in on Mad Queen Dany, then she should have killed him. So. And
also your punishment is that you get one of the most powerful positions in the kingdom. And Grey Worm's like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds...
I'm going to go to where my girlfriend used to live.
Yeah.
And take all my buddies with me.
And it's weird because
the
they're
beach
like,
is gonna suck now.
And they're saying they're like saying that basically Tyrion screwed up along the way, and they're like, but you'll make up for that by being hand to the king or queen for the third time.
Yeah.
It's like, you will once again be given this position, even though you're openly saying you've screwed up a bunch. But all right, why not?
I love Tyrion, but
I love Tyrion
he
too.
was like not
Failed upward.
good. How to succeed in business without really trying. Yikes.
I mean, it's not even where Tyrion landed. It's more that was the deal they were willing to, because the Unsullied that's just like not the point of view they have.
They're not businessmen.
Right.
These are not
deals.
negotiators.
Stab is the deal. I stab or I don't stab.
I guess their characters like follows orders. So it's like if someone tells them what to do, they'll be like, okay.
The problem is that Grey Worm was our only like character of the Unsullied, so we didn't have like Grey Worm's buddy even to like bounce off.
Well, we know that tap 3 times means yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, that's kind of a problem with the Dothraki and the Unsullied this season, is that they were except for Grey Worm, they were all like unnamed.
The Horde.
They were like, they were just kind of like a
and
horde.
there was either
sucks.
almost
It's
none
like
of them left or a bunch of them, depending on.
Well, where
That's
is
like our only people of color is like the Dothraki and the Unsullied.
Yeah.
And, Missandei was super duper beheaded. And you're right. Like, I'm not saying that I want them to cheers it, where it's like him and his best friend hanging out in the Cheers bar or on the Friends Cafe couch talking about their problems, but he was our only viewpoint into anyone of
Her
color.
entire
How about
army,
Essos, which right now is probably on fire.
By the way, what's
Completely
going
on
on
fire.
in Nessa? Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I mean,
Meanwhile, Vanessa.
Dornish wine is still happening somehow.
where did the Dothraki go?
Right. They said the
one-
Unsullied
yeah.
were being given this one area to live.
Yeah.
They said nothing about the Dothraki.
What town is next to King's Landing? Because they are screwed.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, what are you going to do with all the Dothraki who've come here, they traveled so far.
What do you do with the problem with Dothraki? I'm just gonna keep making that joke.
But the thing is, not only the Unsullied, but also the Dothraki followed Daenerys,
Yeah.
right? They believed in her. That's their Khaleesi.
Yep.
They do not follow the rules of the Sen and Kingdom.
Bran.
They don't
Yeah,
follow.
yeah.
They're not going to bend the knee.
Yeah,
to
the
any
Dothraki are
given-
not going to respect Bran.
Right.
And
They're
to
not.
be fair, Bran is whack.
That's true.
Why would you follow Bran? He whack.
I guess if he wargs Drogon back and he can show Drogon control, but that's getting way ahead of ourselves.
Look, I just want him to
show
warg
we
at a
actually got.
Drogon, show Drogon dabbing, and then everyone doing the Running Man.
Where
And
did
then everyone knows that
Oh,
he's
there was
gonna
a
do it.
post-credit scene and it was exactly that.
Yeah, they cut that, actually.
Like, where did Drogon take her? Do we think?
I thought he was trying to bury the body so that John could get away with it. I genuinely thought that he was like, oh, okay, you're my dad now. Because, honestly, how would they know? John could have just been like, Dany flew off.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her. Have you seen her? That's so weird. She must be out for a ride.
I thought that's what he was going to do for a hot
Danny
minute.
was gonna tell
Like, it was misty. The
Yeah.
dragon flew off and took her away. Like, did he cop to it?
Yeah,
Like, there's a missing scene.
He's John, so
Oh, did
yeah,
he?
he did, obviously. But I'm like, I just pictured like he just like takes her off to like the fallen like volcanoes of Atlantis and drops her in. Where was he going with her?
I mean, maybe it's saving it for,
Snack?
I'm not quite dead.
Yeah.
she'll be back in one of the
Oh,
spin-offs.
we're talking about cats eating their owners. Maybe he was like, I
Oh,
don't get
that's grim.
Oh boy.
A real Game of
I
Thrones
mean,
ending.
respect amongst the dragon community.
I was into the love that he had for her.
Okay, so he's not like the
Yes.
Dragon Ted Bundy. Like,
Yeah.
he's fine.
Yeah. Arya, what do we think of Arya?
That was a weird one. Again, it's the feeling like we're missing scenes this season a lot because she has been trained to be a killer, trained to be a killer, trained to be a killer. And then last week we had to very quickly have her shift where she has one conversation with the Hound about don't waste your life. She turns and leaves. But now I get it again. I'm not going to live my life to kill. I'm going to go adventuring. But we needed a little more with her than just to announce it. Like, we needed a conversation of her having about it because it just felt like, again, I guess if she's not going to be a killer, or is she going to go kill in other lands? I wasn't quite clear on that.
I love her, but I actually got that. Like, I got because of all she has done is travel during this season. From the instant that Ned
She's going to do a travel guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, hey, she's gonna go and she's gonna eat food on every continent. Hey
watched that.
guys,
Yeah.
It's your girl Arya.
it's your girl Arya.
I mean, yeah.
I'm at this buffet in Dionne.
I just killed this guy.
I'm sorry, I had to straight up murder this dude, but the wine, you guys.
All right, you still got it. Never mind. I
To
take
my
back what I
top
said.
10 Patreons, you get to name someone from my list.
It's just weird that she chose west, I guess, because it's like no one knows what's east of Essos. I think neither does George R. R. Martin in the big guidebook. He's just like, it's like basically Asia. We'll call it Yisi, I think is his name for it.
Honestly, I think this is one of those things.
Well,
where
she's
we're
mentioned
like,
that before.
Yeah, this I think, and I'm not. I don't know if it's right, but in my heart of hearts, I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, y'all don't care about nothing but Earth. She gonna go west and find the rest of Earth.
The rest of Earth? Like, then there's like New York City?
Yeah.
Like Earth?
No, I'm not kidding. Like, I genuinely do think, because I feel like that happens in a lot of things where at the end you find out, like, oh no, it was Earth all along.
I mean, it is Earth. It's just other dimension Earth.
Yeah, it's like broken ass Earth. And so I think in this thing, it would be
Into the
that she's-
Aryaverse?
Yeah, into the Aryaverse. There's a bunch of different Aryas.
Right.
Look, one of them is a paunchy old man who's still sexy.
One is a nerdy schoolgirl.
So she's gonna like go through some kind of like shimmering veil and enter into New York. It's like the East River,
I don't
Or
know.
like
Or
the-
literally, she's just going to show up and it's
Hudson?
going to be the Bering Strait, or it's going to be Alaska.
Oh, okay.
And then she's going to find other people, and they're going to be like, who are you, and why are you here? And she's going to be like, I killed the Night King, and like, what the frolic is a Night King?
All right. Arya goes into different dimensions. Lon, what's the chat saying?
Oh, what isn't the chat saying? One
Everything.
question they want to know is, what do you guys think now that we've seen the whole show? What was that third OMG moment that they talked about? Remember they said there was that third moment that George
Definitely
pitched
Bran.
them on. Probably Bran becoming
the
king of Westeros.
I think it was Bran.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We watched all of this together. Spoiler. Not spoiler. What am I talking about?
Spoiler for how we viewed the
We
finale.
watched all of this together, and we were doing a very good job of being quiet.
Yeah.
But there were certain moments.
That's when we all broke.
Yeah.
We broke.
Bran the Broken broke us.
Yeah.
Another point from the chat room, you guys were talking about where do we think Drogon is taking Daenerys. Some people think maybe to Volantis, hoping red priests or priestesses can resurrect her.
He rushes her into an ER.
Is that what he's
sequel
just
bait.
bringing her to the Lord of Light version of,
Yes.
critical care?
Oh boy, because she would be pissed.
Yeah. So
Oh,
she
yeah.
came back.
Yeah,
I
if she
don't
came
know.
back, she would be like, "You thought you saw fire and blood before, friends?
Right?
You did, but there's more of it." And
A lot
here
of
it is.
people
You thought you
wondering.
saw the last of me.
You guys touched on this a little. A lot of people wondering what the heck is going to happen to the Bay of Dragons back in Essos. Is Dario just running it himself from now on?
He's
or-
been running it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
for
now
so
that he doesn't really have his
Authority, right?
yeah, right,
Yeah.
his
Okay,
reason
good
for
question.
ruling.
I will say this when it comes to Dario. Dario will take his own authority, and also, he really loved Dany because everyone loves Dany. Dario gonna be just fine.
Daria.
Dario is gonna be beautiful and fine. He's a
Okay.
very attractive man. He is going to do perfectly.
All right, quick question for us. Now that we're talking about maybe
Who
this
can get it?
happened, no. But now that this has happened here and there, and where'd the dragon go, and Night King. I mean, I'm going to bring up a word that Spencer does not like in association with the program.
Oh.
And the word is mythology, because I believed as of I think clearly 20 minutes before the show ended that somehow there was going to be some satisfying resolution to the mythology. And this is why I get the idea of you set up this whole supernatural and you king and figure of terror, and ultimately that's not the point. It's the terror, what lies in the hearts of men, is the shadow, and all of that is the point, that's the real darkness. Great, good metaphor. But I do think that there is also a piece of this, and I don't want to be cynical, that they've been setting up either the prequels or the spin-offs to like leave these threads out there, because these might be things that we see in those.
I think in universe, all the mythology was Bran's long con to seize power.
You think so?
I kind of do.
I mean, like, that's a little my read too now. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't think that's the intended read.
He was
though.
a lot more, personable
He's the little
in the
figure.
epilogue than he has been recently. Like, he was cracking smiles and like saying like, "Oh, I'll handle it." Wink. Like, he Kaiser Soze'd, I think, the whole of Westeros.
And,
he might get up off that
and
chair.
also, what's great is
Drop
that
the coffee cup.
you can take any shot of him staring into space and put it into any show.
Yeah.
You don't actually, obviously it would be great if you pay the actor to come back in, but if for some reason he's like, no, I need $1 billion to be Bran again, it's like, we can use anyone who can roll their eyes in the back of their head.
I just think that the mythology. I think that they're developing so many prequels and spin-offs that one of them could be super mythology heavy, right?
Right.
One of them could be like, this is your all-in fantasy all the time.
Children of the Forest.
Yeah.
We're going.
But I mean,
you.
if someone was like, I'm going to make them interesting characters, but this show just was not concerned with that, so I don't think it was like Benioff and Weiss purposely seeding stuff for the future. But yes, if they
I
want,
don't think they care.
want this
I
to
think
be a
they're done.
franchise, someone might, right? Someone might be like, I'm going to do something with that you never did, and run with it.
Sure. I mean, I do. Okay. Question then for us is because Spencer, it's kind of like immediately when the show ended, I was like, wait a minute, but this guy basically let loads of people die.
Yeah.
Could have done something about it. Clearly,
Kept his mouth shut.
Kept his mouth shut. He clearly knew, because at the end he was basically like, "Why do you think I've come all this way?" Which, of course, is a meta comment to the audience of like, this is what Bran's arc has been about the whole time. But at the same time, it's super Kaiser Soze, to your point.
Yeah.
But I do not think that is the intent.
No.
I think we're supposed to be happy, but I think we all just got played.
Like super, super long con.
Okay, I'm gonna get really
He's gonna get out of that
inappropriate
chair.
for like
Fully
half
Kaiser Soze.
a second.
Get too inappropriate.
It's not gonna get too inappropriate. It's just kind of inappropriate.
It's not like we're taking off the air.
No. I'm not gonna get too inappropriate, but I just like, look, Bran's first point of being Bran was seeing people doing the business and then getting shoved off of a
When a
of
sister
thing.
really loves a brother.
Yes.
When a sister loves a brother.
Yes. Very much.
We know that he can't have kids. How much of his time does he spend inappropriately watching other people?
Well, that's a
we knew
question
that.
a lot of
That's-
people
that's-
have.
Bran's a creeper. Bran's a full-on
No,
creeper.
he's always like that.
I love that I'm like, I'm going to ask an
That's
inappropriate
like-
question, and you guys are like,
Please.
oh no, we covered this like 5 episodes ago.
Bran's gonna let
That's well
Tyrion
known.
run things
is
while he
known.
goes
He's
off
got the
creeping.
only
Yeah.
Pornhub account in all of Westeros.
First thing he does when he gets Drogon is be
Some
like,
of them
who
are
can I
safe for
watch?
work.
No, it is known. Yeah.
I like literally that's the most inappropriate thing I can think
Yeah.
of.
When a
You're just
teenage
like, oh,
boy
no, we're
finds
fine.
out that they can look
Shame
at anything
Bran.
throughout
Yeah,
history, I'll tell you like what numbers 1 through 1,000 are.
I mean, the only other thing that I'll say about the subversion of tropes in this series, and this, again, like, I have loved Game of Thrones.
I still do.
really,
I will
still
still
do.
defend it.
I
I'll
still
still
love
rewatch it.
I still
love
defend
it.
it. I think it's possible that I'll rewatch this season and maybe feel a little differently. I don't know. I'm certainly going to
agree.
watch this episode again. The resolution is the resolution that I largely thought it was heading in terms of a lot of these characters, except for Bran. I did not see that coming. But when Ned Stark was killed at the end of the first season, when the Red Wedding happened, when these events happened, it never felt like it was a gimmick, right? Like it was. Things were leading to that moment, and it wasn't just to. It did subvert your expectations, but the purpose wasn't to subvert your expectations. The purpose was, Ned got himself there.
Yeah, I don't think it was like the show wasn't at the beginning saying that anything can happen. It was saying that no one is safe.
Yeah.
And it seemed like as it went on that people got safer and safer.
That Starks are stupid and will always pick
that
honor
was-
over their own safety.
That was pretty solid
That's
throughout.
baked in.
Yeah, that's baked in.
the premise.
But here's my even counter argument to that. I don't think it was the show or the book saying, "Guess what, suckers? No one's safe." I think it was that George R. R. Martin had watched stories in which a character had painted themselves into a corner, and because they were the protagonist, they were able to Deus Machina themselves dance out of it through an invisible wall. And what he did was set up a guy who had painted himself into a corner through his actions and his choices. He could have left King's Landing, and he didn't. He didn't. And he paid the price for his actions. I think what he was doing was fulfilling the truth of what would happen to that character. And then when things happen just to surprise you, then you're not fulfilling the truth of that storyline or that character.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Did you read Todd Vanderwerf? I think for Vox he writes these days. He wrote a really good piece after last week's episode that was so controversial, and basically expounding on things we're talking about right here. About it's like the show. It's not like the show has changed everything about the story it's telling. It's just the way it's telling it. And like we were saying before, it's just because they've with Dany, for instance, the fact that they decided that, well, we're not going to spend as much time with her as a character, so we're not going to get her shift fully. And whether that was consciously because they wanted to get a gotcha or because they just didn't have time because they had less episodes, it felt like it
Or they didn't know how.
Or they didn't know how, so it didn't feel the same. So it's not like, oh, suddenly they're changing the things that happen. It's just, it's the storytelling. It's that we saw all the moments that earned, sadly, Ned's death.
Yeah.
It was shocking when it happened, but when you watch it again, you're like, of course, this is all they're setting up. With Dany, it's not so simple, and yes, there's foreshadowing, but there's also having the character actually take her journey, and they skipped way too many integral parts.
Agreed. And then when Rob met his end, we saw everything that led to that. Everything. So I think that's what's disappointing, because it's like, sure, the Night King doesn't matter, but it also didn't matter. you know.
Right.
If we spend that much time on someone,
I will say
want
we
it to
did not
matter.
watch the whole credits. Maybe his hand pops up out of the snow in the weirwood grove at
For
the very
half
end.
a second, I thought John was going to go into the, and I'm not saying this would have been a good thing because it wouldn't, but that John was going to go into the north and Daenerys was now like the Night Queen. And their happily ever after was going to be in those circumstances.
Okay.
I'm forming a team.
Yeah.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Lon, what are they saying? Do they are they pleased with the ending? Do they have another one that they would have liked to see?
I mean, a lot of people not super happy with the ending in the chat room. A lot of complaints, but they do. A frequent request is to talk about Brienne writing Jaime's biography. What did you guys think of that
That was
moment?
lovely.
What did you think of
I
that as a
love that. That was
capper?
very
That was very
sweet.
lovely.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite moments
We
of the
liked it.
episode. We were
It's a miracle. It's a Christmas miracle.
Well, that is, you know, with all of the problems that people I think have had with Brienne's arc this season, I feel like she had one of the people who had the most realized and completed
She
arc.
did. Yeah, she did.
Like,
Again,
that was-
And
they're fine if they did it.
Yeah.
Go-
No, that's it. Like, there are other things that I really liked, but for Brienne, I know that we had problems, and I was the same. When she was crying over Jaime, I was like, you too good for this girl. Sack it up. But no, like, that led her to being, you know, the lead of the Knights and getting to, like, that was great.
Yeah. No, it was a really nice moment. Again, you know, being redundant here, but like Jaime, another thing where I'm assuming that George R. R. Martin said, and at the end, Jaime will go back to Cersei and they'll die together, which I didn't think the show earned. He should have spent more time with Brienne. We should have seen more of his decision
Or
go
not
back.
bang Brienne.
Or not bang Brienne, but her moment at that final episode was great. Because she, you know,
Amazing.
Jaime had done a lot. Even if at the end he went back to his stupid sister, he still had like done a lot of great things for Brienne.
Sister
she would
girlfriend.
still have a lot of, you know, love and respect for him, and I thought that was a lovely
Yeah, I
moment.
thought it was poetic because it was like when you say, "Oh, he just went back for Cersei," it's like, yeah, great. But when the way she wrote it was like he died defending his
queen.
queen.
Yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, like he was his whole arc was.
She saved his
Perfect.
legacy because he was the Kingslayer.
He was so
and she-
hated, and he
yeah,
never
yeah.
got the storybook chivalrous
I will say,
credit he was due.
I was reading it as she was writing it. I do wish there was more about her saying, like, yo, y'all don't know about the Mad King? But I guess this
Right.
isn't Gossip or any other TMC
She
or
kept
Gossip
adding
Law.
like in between the lines.
He hit it and quit it.
Oh, by the way, he totally netted me.
I will say though,
That's official.
that was that was one of my favorite Raging Throne moments too. But it was also the moment where it was like that is all you needed to do to illustrate that story is powerful and that
Right.
story is about who is telling it. So Brienne's version of Jaime, she felt he deserved this, right?
Right,
And
right.
that is now who Jaime is.
That's how he
in
will be
print.
remembered. Yeah.
That is all we needed.
Yep.
In order for that particular idea to be communicated.
Yes,
You didn't need
But
to
it was
plop
great.
Song of Ice and
Yeah.
Fire on the desk
Yeah.
and go, get it?
Or have Tyrion give a speech
Monologue
about
of
how the
that,
most
yeah.
important thing in the world and the driving force of the world is story.
Right.
You know, I didn't hate that.
It's not a bad sentiment. I
It's
mean,
not a
it's
bad
true.
sentiment. It's
It's-
true. Yeah.
But the
But
more
it's not
poetic way to
Bran.
show it is
It's-
Brienne. That was the better way.
It's
yeah.
called A Song of Ice and Fire.
All right.
But we don't know if we're gonna get the last two parts of it.
I call it a Game of Thrones. I don't know. We're
That's
workshopping
but yeah,
titles.
they argue on the title as we go out.
I do want.
But it was
I
a great
should-
moment. Not to turn it negative again.
Brienne
Brienne
was
was
great.
great. We
Yeah,
liked
Brienne
it.
was
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I ship Brienne and Pod. Pod is the dude
She
Brienne
deserves
deserves.
Okay.
Two nights.
She deserves
Yeah, I
it.
guess
She-
that's
she
all that's
deserves.
left because Tormund's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tormund's back in the north. She could.
Torrent's going north,
Are
but,
there
but
other
then Podrick
moments
can
of
Tormund
Yeah.
goes
Like-
north to be his spinoff.
Lon, any other things we missed?
Only other thing from the chat room is several people pointed out that as much hate as the Sam Song of Ice and Fire moment is getting, they actually kind of did set it up in season 7. Sam commented that the books in the Citadel should have more poetic titles
Yes,
after
he
he
did.
comes across one called The Chronicles of the Wars Following the Death of King Robert I. So he's been stewing on this for a season, like, what would I call the book about what's going on now? If that helps at all.
But then he's a good writer. Then why does he have to write the thing that's the thing of the books that we read?
He could marry another title. I think is what we're saying.
Yeah.
He's very creative.
But something like that, it's not an Easter egg. It's like an Easter omelet, like smashed into your face. It's like everyone just rolls their eyes.
just-
It's like a pie. It's like a pie. in the
Easter
face.
pie.
Felt awkward in Game of
hot pie.
Thrones.
A hot pie.
It felt just extra weird in Game of Thrones to have that little winky moment. You know,
That whole ending was like it was really weird to me. It was like the ending of a sitcom that we'd all watched for
It's like
10
the
years.
Seinfeld ending
It
where
was
they're all
like-
in prison. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
I
what are
wanted
you
someone.
gonna do?
I'm sorry, but when Bron's like, "Oh, the brothel's burnt down," I wanted something to be like, "And the women inside them burnt down."
Yeah.
Bron, like you're being awful. Like people died, and he's like, "Oh, we
See,
need to do
it's
Bron."
smoldering. It was a few weeks had
And
passed.
by the way,
Right.
what made Bran a good accountant? He's the
He
best.
makes deals. He makes deals.
Well, as we learned from Chernobyl, sometimes it's just because you
Get
work your way
Ron
up.
paid.
And look, and you could work at a different factory and then someday be in charge of the Energy Commission.
I mean,
That is
yeah,
what we
that's
learned
true.
from Chernobyl. Watch Chernobyl.
I'm not saying that the actual world doesn't also work this way quite often, but it's just the fact that he's like, I'm the master of coin now, let's build brothels. It's like, yeah, that's what that guy would
He's
do.
the master of coin because he's the Lord of Highgarden.
I know, but what I'm saying, I know that. I
It's
know.
not like he's like the great. They were like, "Who's good with numbers?"
Well,
Bron,
if
you
you're
do
gonna
it.
do a democracy, then maybe
He controls
just
all the
because
money,
of
like-
where you live, you don't get
Yeah.
to be in charge of money. You know what
He
I mean?
knows how
I
to
don't-
double his money. He basically just, keeps betting on himself.
I
and
live in
there he is.
Koreatown. I don't farm. If I was suddenly elected the queen of a town, don't make me in charge of farming just because of where I live.
Feudalism. That's how it works. It's kind of feudal.
I have problems with feudalism.
We all do, believe me. It's not a great system.
It's not a great system, and Lon, you're right. That is fundamentally feudalism. But I think that
a good title.
what I'm trying.
My new Game of Thrones podcast,
feudalism.
Fundamentally Feudalism. Tune in.
By the way, that's what it's like. That's what that felt like to me. Was
Yeah.
like if somebody could just make a like dun 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 fundamentally feudalism with that last sequence.
How about Surfs Up? S-E-R-F.
I hate you so much. God damn it.
But I'm curious
To
because
serve
if
with Roth.
it is like, is it not having your cake and eating it too? It's like we're talking about breaking this wheel and it's a totally different system and.
I think the ending was supposed to be baby steps. You know,
Right.
the ending was supposed to be,
Yeah.
well, instead of one person deciding everything, it's, a half dozen people deciding who that one person's going
Right.
to
They
be.
And
shot
it's
down
funny.
Sam's idea to
They
be
sure
like, well, we
did.
can't
Yeah.
do that, but here's the little step we can take.
It's funny because he likes to bang.
All right.
Get it?
I do.
Ooh, what? Okay, now I love it.
How can we? Let's end on. Did we have a raging throner tonight? Did we have a moment besides the Brienne?
A lot of people. It's a
see.
very popular
Check my notes.
GIF that's being shared all over the internet. That shot of Daenerys walking out to talk to her armies, and we get Drogon's
Drogon
wings
swinging
Oh, yeah.
behind
That was
her.
dope.
That
That's
was a
probably
really cool shot.
everybody's favorite shot of the episode. Also, a burgeoning meme on Twitter right now is posting the photo of Brienne writing and then a reverse shot of what is she writing? And there's been all sorts of humorous. My favorite one is The Simpsons. Homer's really drunk postcard.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the beer talking
$5.
moments. Yeah, there you go. That's a good
Okay.
Nice.
All
All
work
right,
and no
I don't-
play make Brienne
I
an
don't
adult
want to
girl.
turn a great moment into it because I thought that was a really cool, like here's the actual angel of death, like
Yeah,
beautiful poetic moment. I will say this about the costumes, however, for a show that's like we're gonna take fantasy tropes and turn them on their head and play in shades of gray, they kind of don't because
She got
they
her all black
fully do
costume, yeah.
with Sansa and with Daenerys. They'll be like, you're in a white dress because you're good. Now you're bad. Like you
Did she have
know.
a post-genocide costume change?
She
Yes.
did.
She did.
Yep,
she did.
So
She
that
sure
was
did.
my that was my
Because she
favorite
was
part.
planning it ahead, so
Yeah.
she's like, this is going to look really
Yeah, I'm
good.
sure she just like kept the backpack in the dragon's mouth.
But it's like what happened with Sansa, you know, and she became like Dark Sansa.
But I feel like they
Yeah.
had a couple weeks since that council. She could have been like, get me something like badass.
Yeah.
All right. I have something that I really
But that was an
liked.
amazing
Yeah, that's
shot.
great.
I
was.
love that. That
That was
looked
a great
really
shot.
cool.
Is it okay? I want to shout out Jon Snow with his Depp gel hair. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Depp gel.
Yeah.
Dep gel.
Yeah, it was
gel.
that wet look gel where you would put it in and it would just make your hair look like it was really wet. It was very 80s.
Well, so a lot of wrestlers look like that.
Yeah, it was a very Barbie doll look. Jon Snow had a lot of that going on in this episode, and I really appreciated it.
Solid.
Did you have a?
I'm always Team Sansa. So even though I would have liked if she was just in charge of everything at the end, I still was gonna love Queen of the North. Come on.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was great to see.
That was one of mine too.
Yeah.
That moment, I was like, I wish I felt in total the way I
Yes.
did in that moment,
Yes.
which was it was bittersweet because she suffered a lot to get there, but it felt really good to see her there. But my other thing, just in general, is that I love Captain America. He's my favorite. Jon Snow is fully the Captain America of this world. He is beset upon on all sides. He does the final thing that is like the true sacrifice. He makes this choice and he's still unsure if he did the right thing and he's feeling the pain and the regret of it. And he had one moment when he turned back and he looked forward and he realized he was going to go be a wildling and be kind of free for the first time. He half smiled.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
He
great.
had a tiny moment of joy, and God, does he deserve it?
Yeah,
It's
he should
not
slow
going back
dance with
Peggy.
Tormund. That'd be a beautiful ending.
that would be.
Mine was also a Sansa moment of Edmure Tully's like rambling on about
Yeah.
like I'm the most qualified. I
yeah.
had 2 wars. Like you were a hostage. Come
Yeah.
on. And she's like, sit down, uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite tweets of the night. Jill Gudowitz, Uncle Please Sit is the new retire bitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Delete your account. I've always been on Team Sansa. I'm disappointed she didn't end up on the throne, but she at least got something, and she deserves more than I'm sorry anyone deserves.
I think that seeing that final sequence with the Starks after all they've been through, the 3 of them at least, when they were
they
cross-cutting.
came out on top.
Yeah.
I know. Really, for this show, the fact that they all made it to the end. And,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're ruling.
Yeah.
The Starks
The
are
kingdom,
yeah.
the Texas, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call Winterfell
Sure.
now, and Christopher Columbus thing,
Yeah.
bringing
Hopefully
new
not-
diseases to new
Not so
shores.
negative. I was gonna say.
And then hopefully John's just like in a cave. With
And-
the new, with
Tormund.
with Tormund.
With
or
a sexy
whatever,
redhead
yeah.
who could be Tormund.
Yeah, happy. That's all we want. There was quite a few moments in this finale that I really did like. I was loving that first 20 minutes, and there were quite a few moments that I really really did like. And Bran is also king. Lon, anything final to say?
They're very glad we finally talked about Edmure Tully. A lot of Edmure fans in the chat room.
Sit down, Uncle.
Fresh fish, fresh fish.
This is going to
Blackfish,
be
right?
one of the most.
Blackfish was his uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Blackfish
related.
was awesome.
Yeah.
He
Brendan
also
Tully.
schooled. Basically said, "Sit down."
Are you a blackfish?
That's
too?
bad fish. But we're sublime.
Favorite house band is Sublime. We got the Tullys.
I don't know what I've written here.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Fun code.
This is going to be one of the most talked about finales, I think, probably in the history of television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? This is going to be
gonna be
like
the biggest
right
since
there.
Lost was
Right there with
discussed.
Lost.
And
Sopranos.
loved by everyone uniformly.
Yeah, universally beloved.
Everyone's
Yeah.
gonna love it.
Well, I mean, we forget about the ones that people did universally beloved.
Breaking
Breaking Bad.
and
And
nothing
That's
else.
a really good one.
Well, there was Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Breaking Bad did it.
you'll
It's
recall.
our
I
end of the
guess
show, it
when
turns
we're
out.
talking about like these heavily serialized shows, it's easier for like a sitcom to have a like Parks and Rec, love it,
Yeah.
but it didn't have to deliver on years of mythology. It just had to have a sweet, satisfying ending, and it did. It's much tougher, which is why I even though of course I'm still going to be disappointed when I don't think it lands. It's like, yes, I know how tough it must be when you have years of all this serialization to deliver on, and Breaking Bad does stand out as the one in the past 20 years that I think most people were really happy with.
And
So you're gonna be really cranky about Supernatural, is what you're saying?
That's going to be a tough one.
yeah.
15 years? Jeez. Oh, man.
But Breaking Bad had killed so many people that they only needed to end it for like 3 characters.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones had too many bodies left standing.
Well, and there were very few people you were like rooting for.
Yeah.
You know, I think in this series we all had people that we wanted to see triumph.
Yeah, a lot of
And
likable characters.
A lot of characters that we've been rooting for and following for a lot of years. So I think it's tough. I think it's really, and probably very few people, especially that were just watching the show, were like secretly rooting for Bran. But hey,
I look forward to the civil war that will break out immediately after Bran's death.
I was rooting for Sam.
Immediately.
I was rooting for like this guy seems like the most fit leader to me. But that
Visionary.
aside, visionary, all of that.
Gilly didn't get to pop up in
Family
the finale.
man.
Yeah, they closed the door
Family
on her.
man, you know, the whole thing. But this will be one of the most debated, talked about series in history. We continue to talk about Lost to this day and The Sopranos. So there will be no shortage of discussion around it. But do you have
Takes
final
will come
thoughts?
fast.
This is it.
Well, no. Our final
can never
thoughts will
talk about it
come
again.
on Wednesday when we.
will
I
not
know
let you speak of
this
it.
show kind of turned into recapping the whole series, but we will be talking about the entire show as a whole later this week, and
Very excited.
I'll gather my thoughts. I'll watch it again. Maybe I'm just pissed off the first time. I don't know. I need to-
What did you? But today you sit there still feeling kind of like not as satisfied as you would have liked to have been.
No, this was, at the victory speech, the show's pants fell down, and it had some comically heart-shaped boxers on, and then, its dingling fell out.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
That
that's the
sounds
end of Game of
amazing.
Thrones.
All right, and Danielle.
I do not think that it was heart underwear dingling hangout bad.
Yeah.
But I need to watch it again so I can get some perspective on it. I need to watch it again and specifically zero in on Bran to see what I missed. That's what I need
Fair
to
enough.
do.
We'll do
whole
a Bran
series?
rewatch.
We can
What
cram
everyone's
that.
waiting for. Look, the series, he was the inciting incident aside from John Aaron and everything else. It's fine. I need to go back and rewatch all of the Bran
know what?
stuff.
Maybe
We
if
have
there's if they were leaving scheming Bran breadcrumbs throughout the whole show, maybe we'll breadcrumbs. I'll go back and look for that, and that would be amazing.
All right. Well, we have a series called Cram It. We can Bran it for you. We'll just-
Bran it! Bran it!
We're gonna Bran it.
Bran it.
That's going to be your job, Lon.
Lon,
Great.
we're
I
gonna
can't
Bran
wait
it.
to just watch Bran scenes. Nothing else. Get
All
past
Bran
everything
all the
else.
time.
No, I don't. He can't see. He's like Doctor Strange. He can see potential futures. He can't see the future. I think that's where you guys are maybe missing it a little bit. So it's not like he could scheme this is the path that will definitely get me on the throne. He could just see well, here are a bunch of different possible futures.
I think you're maybe right. I just think the show avoided answering that question.
Well, right.
Yeah.
You don't get any sort of real hint
Yeah.
on exactly what he's seeing, but it's all a jumble. It's all this huge download of information. It's not like he can exactly plot a course based on what he knows is going to happen. That's my take. So he wasn't oh, well, she'll burn King's Landing and then I'll become the king.
We should have just cut off. That should have been cut to black.
Fade out.
Lon, what's your final take? Final take from the chat.
Oh, the final take from the chat is, it's all over. It's
gone by real fast.
I don't know what to say. It goes by real fast. There's a lot of people that are excited about Ghost getting booped. There's a lot of people that are upset about
Ghost
Bran.
get
There's a lot of people, wondering where Drogon is going. And that was a lot of the debate too. Is that the most important thing for Bran to be focusing on, or is that a distraction for Bran? Is he being a good ruler by zeroing in on where Drogon is, or is he getting out of actually doing his job?
Nah, it's like finding nukes.
Bran doesn't
We're
care.
doing-
Yeah.
That's a fair question, because if people are saying that he's being a good ruler to say, I will go find this weapon.
Right, is it like a
that's
rogue
very
nuke? He's got to
dangerous.
find it before
it's
it
a rogue
explodes and
nuke,
blows
yeah.
up the kingdom?
Okay, that's a fair point,
All right.
chat. That's a fair point that Bran was doing the right thing with his abilities, which we don't understand, but that's presumed to. Then he would just warg him back, or what would he? Then
Well,
what?
just finding if he can warg into I don't know. I'm just saying if he can warg into any animal who could even see Drogon, he could figure out where he is, and they could send people with make a scorpion and go
Yeah.
try to find
If he
him.
could kill Drogon?
Or he could make him fall
This show
asleep.
has no respect for animals.
Well, what are they going to do? John's the only one who could sort of commune with it, who's alive,
then I
and
guess
he's
you
in the
shouldn't have sent
distant
him
north.
to the frozen tundra.
But he couldn't. What else was he supposed to do?
Go
Take
get
care of him.
Drogon.
Give him a nice
Take care of
habitat.
him.
Yeah,
You have
give
no
him- give
respect
him
for
goats.
animals. Come on.
I will say this. They seem like they did. You were asking about were they setting up stuff for mythology? I don't think so, but I do think when they were saying maybe I'll visit you in 10 years, it was who knows what could happen when we might have some sort of reunion movie. So I did feel they were leaving that tiny crack open there about
I'm
a
good.
sequel. Yeah.
I'd watch it. 10 years will absolve a lot of sins. I'll definitely watch the
I
reunion.
would
movie.
watch
Except
that.
it's not going to be 10 years. It's going to be 3 years, and they're going to
Yeah.
say it's 10 years.
Maybe. I mean, I will say I'd like to think that Bran was finding Drogon to take care of him and not to slay him. But that's
I do
that's the world I'm going to live in.
You can't tie them up.
I'm sorry, I'm
they
gonna
freak
say- yeah.
out. You can't commune with them because all the people who do that are dead or in the distant frozen north. You gotta kill
Send
that
him north
dragon.
with John. It's fine. But it wasn't the prophecy Bran, you're gonna fly.
Yeah. Fly the dragon, warg the dragon.
Yeah.
Warg
He
that
warged
dragon.
into
Warg that
ravens and flew
dragon.
around during the Battle of
Warg that
Winterfell.
dragon.
Warg that dragon.
Warg that dragon. Warg that dragon. Warg that dragon, and then I'll be glad you're king. Warg that dragon, and we'll be just fine.
another
King
game show.
Bran, long may he warg.
Long may he warg.
Long may he warg. All right, guys.
Billy
I
gave
think,
us the wrap-up
Okay,
segment.
that's the wrap. Billy's like.
They're chanting too.
Billy.
They're just chanting,
tired.
"Work that dragon."
Hey,
Tie-tie.
I hope you guys enjoyed Game of Thrones. I hope that you.
The entire show that we're not responsible for.
I do. I mean,
Hope you're enjoying life.
I hope you're enjoying life. I hope everything feels good. It's a TV show. It's
I feel really bad for the person that just unabashedly enjoyed the show and stuck with us for an hour of complaints.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I honestly do. I
But
mean,
they're happier than we are, so.
They are happier.
we're
I
Jon
envy
Snow and you're Bran. You're
Hot
Bran.
pie, yeah.
You're hot pie.
Yeah, we're just half smiling.
And Podrick. I feel like we will come back. We will think about it. This is one of our favorite shows on television. It's also just a show. And so at the end of the day, there's probably lots of things that we loved about it and things we'll nitpick about. And I know some folks out there are probably feeling disappointed. It's okay. We'll have another show soon. His Dark Materials is coming.
The Mandalorian is coming.
This episode
Watch
is sponsored
Chernobyl.
by-
It's hard and sad.
Lots to talk about. We want to know what you guys think in the comments below. We will be back later this week for a series wrap up, and then that'll be it for Game of Thrones until the next. How many prequels?
Well,
Spin-offs?
one for sure, but we're gonna probably end up with like
Yeah.
3 or 4.
All right.
So we'll see.
A Tale of Dragons.
Yes.
And ice. And fire. And volcanoes. And Targaryens.